I wanted this to be a little more open and free than we often see up here, so I mandated that everyone should have drinks.
For which we are very grateful.
For which everyone is absurdly grateful and hopefully a little bit drunk and saying things that they shouldn't say. So what I'm going to do here is the format is we're going to let everyone spend 3 minutes to talk about themselves. We're going to ask a few prickly questions as we go along, and then I'm going to open it up to these guys to ask themselves questions, things that they're interested in as they go. And then towards the end, we're going to actually ask everybody if they had $10,000 to invest in someone who wasn't themselves, who wins. So I think this will be much more interesting than the usual. Thank you. Specifically because of this. So guys, let's do a 2-minute pitch each. We'll start over here, introduce yourself, and let's see where we go.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Well, my name is Martin Cronin. I'm the CEO of Patriot One Technologies. We're a company in public safety through concealed weapons detection. So we're commercializing technologies to detect when somebody's bringing a gun or a knife or a bomb into a public space. We're public on TSX Venture. We've been there for a couple of years. We have a market cap of about 180 million, and we're just about to go commercial with revenue in this quarter. So we've got a very exciting period ahead. We've got a great team. We've got about 10,000 qualified sales leads. We've got distributors in 12 countries lined up and some major partnerships. So we're pretty excited about where we're at now. And we know there's a lot of people in the room who've been following our story and supporting us from the outset, for which we are extremely grateful.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Ashish Malik. I'm the president and CEO of B-Vectoring Technologies, and we're actually developing a disruptive, innovative, sustainable agricultural production tool, which actually is going to allow growers to increase their profitability in an environmentally sustainable and responsible way. And really what we're trying to address is the need globally that we have to find new ways to increase productivity per acre of land that farmers grow on, but in an environmentally responsible way. As consumers, we all want farmers to reduce the amount of synthetic pesticides that they use or synthetic fertilizers that they use. And by the way, those two together are about a $150 billion industry globally. And so innovative tools such as ours are a way that we can address that need that we have for safe, affordable food moving forward. Very specifically, what we have is a technology that combines the benefit of biological crop protection products. These are products that are derived from a natural source, so they're much safer than a synthetic chemical would be. And we combine that with an all-new delivery system where we deliver these biologicals using the natural pollination process of bees. So we actually use managed pollinator hives to deliver these agents to crops and protect the crops against different diseases. We are pre-commercial. We expect pilot revenue later in 2018. And beyond that, we've already started market expansion projects outside of the United States, Mexico, Europe. I should say our initial market focus is Florida. And also very active in different business-to-business partnership discussions.
Phil Campbell.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. My name is Philip Campbell. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ascent Industries. Ascent is a federally licensed producer of cannabis. We have our cultivation license, soil extraction license, and dealer's license. So we're one of a very few companies that holds all 3 of those licenses in Canada. There's only about 5 or 6 of them, all told. We're also licensed in Oregon and Nevada under both the medical and recreational systems there, and we're pursuing licensing in Denmark. So Ascent is a global cannabis company focused on consumer packaged goods. We started trading on the CSE in August under the symbol ASNT, and we have a lot of exciting milestones ahead of us. We have a number of facilities that we're working on to get licensed here in Canada, and looking to scale up the industry. So that's something that hasn't happened yet in the cannabis industry, is producing products to scale. It's been a very small to medium-sized business opportunity so far. Obviously, that's changing on October 17th. We think that we're very well positioned to really target that consumer packaged goods segment, which is proving to be the largest opportunity in the most mature states in the US, like Colorado and Washington. It's over half of the revenue market. And when you take that into consideration and also consider that there's only about 45 or 50 licensed producers in Canada that are able to produce oils, Knowing that it's going to be over 50% of the market, that's really what our focus is on here, is to be able to produce large volumes of those products, to be able to build national brand presence in Canada, and ultimately international presence by entering markets early, like Denmark, which just started a regulatory system this year, and other markets that are opening up over time. So we're very excited about the opportunity moving forward, especially within Canada as global leaders in the cannabis industry, and we're excited to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tharmer, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of SmartShare Solutions. So we've built the world's most advanced data platform for smart parking. As you are all aware, parking is a huge problem for everybody. Currently, cities don't have any data when it comes to occupancy. For example, City of Vancouver, they send someone out twice a year. They count how many spots are vacant or occupied, and that's the data they use to implement policies. And you also are aware that there are a number of parking apps, different payment methods. It's very inefficient. So what we've done is that we've built a unified back-end system to implement all these systems together onto one single dashboard, which is live and historical analytics when it comes to parking spots, payment methods, automatic ticketing, and all sorts of analytics to help in policy changes. We're currently deployed in the city of Surrey. We're about to be deployed in the city of Vancouver, and we're in talks with the city of Richmond. A nice example of a policy change we made with the city of Surrey, where we launched a pilot project about last year. We put six sensors in front of Surrey Memorial Hospital. The average stay that someone was supposed to stay there for was for 2 hours. In 1 month, we ticketed the average duration for all parking spots was 3.5 hours. That alone is lost revenue for cities. I'll end this off by saying that we're about to be listed on a TSXV, currently going through a process after we finish raising our 1.3 million. So if you guys do have any questions, do come by our booth. And thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Sheldon Bennett. I'm the CEO of DMG Blockchain Solutions. We're a diversified blockchain company, and we work in cryptocurrency forensics and in crypto mining. We started our company in crypto mining as a small mine. We've now grown that size up to our flagship operation BC of 85 megawatts. We do mainly Bitcoin mining, but we also do other GPU-based minings and other altcoins. Our software side of the company does enterprise-level blockchain services. So for companies that want to include blockchain into their IT platforms or start a new platform based on blockchain technology. I think yesterday our CEO explained some of our new projects that we have in the area of blockchain, and one of them in the area of cannabis with blockchain. As well, we do forensics. We work with different government organizations and exchanges on AML and KYC, and many companies use our CFE services to help audit and do investigations into issues where cryptocurrencies are involved. We're a public company listed on the TSX, and I'm looking forward to the Gauntlet challenge.
You say that now.
Thanks. Hello? Hurts? Yeah. Hi, so Elad Barak. I lead the business development and fundraising at Province Brands. And what we do is we're patent pending on the world's first beer brewed out of cannabis. We're trying to create a product that is a healthier and safer way than consuming alcohol. Every of us have probably heard lately about everything that's going with beer and with cannabis, but everybody's infusing, and Province Brands has a unique technology to actually brew from it and create this craft premium product that is so missing right now in the market. And we believe it will attract both cannabis users and alcohol users. Right now, we exactly leased a place near Niagara Falls to build our facility. It's 123,000 square feet. We're listing soon on the TSX and starting another raise concurrent to that. And we'll be happy to talk with everybody afterwards.
Thank you, everybody. So we're going to start at the beginning here, Patriot One. I should preface this by saying that some of these gentlemen are clients of mine. They're still going to get this shit kicked out.
Yeah, don't you forget that.
Yeah. You don't want to mess with the guy who has the pen. So Patriot One, you've been around since late 2016. Stock prices built over that time. Market cap's built over that time. Technology has built over that time. What's taken so long to get to a product that's ready for market?
The simple answer is none of this is easy. This is complex science. There's a lot of complex physics and maths involved. Now, as you know, the CEO of the company, there's a lot to be said for being private for as long as possible and flying below the radar to give you time. We haven't had that luxury. We've been out there in the public markets, and actually that's given us great exposure, but it puts tremendous pressure on. People want to see results. It's a beast that needs feeding, and that can be a real challenge when you're doing complex technology development. These things, take time. The phase that we've been going through over the last 9 months, just for people to understand the complexity, this is about teaching the algorithms real-world conditions, because there's a world of difference between doing a stable demonstration of a technology in a controlled lab environment and making it work robustly in real-world environments. So we made a decision to get out there in the real world. We've been working in the Westgate Resort in Las Vegas. We're in with the University of British Columbia here in BC. We're going into University of North Dakota. What that allows us to do is teach the algorithms all the real-world variables that they need to understand.
So you're basically in an alpha stage right now?
Sorry?
You're basically in alpha stage.
Well, we're actually now, what we're doing right now is we're gravitating from being a technology to being a platform where we've integrated other sensors. We've been doing fabulous client demonstrations, and we're now rolling out into commercial deployments at the end of this quarter. And that was a milestone we'd set for ourselves. So we're not behind schedule. We're right on schedule, and I think people are going to be very pleased to see the progress that's going to be coming out this quarter.
Let's move to the world of agriculture. Sure. So your technology is to, as I understand it, to brush the bees with a fungus as they leave the hive, and they take that fungus, pollinate a plant, leave the fungus behind, and that fungus benefits the plant. We've all seen those struggles that have come within the bee world with colony collapses. It's a very delicate ecosystem. How can we be sure that if your bees are flying off into the wild, that they're not leaving that ecosystem in a way that they shouldn't?
Great question. So first, the easiest way to answer that is years and years of research to show that this product and technology is totally safe to the bees. Not only are we doing it to satisfy our own needs, we're doing it to satisfy our customers' needs, and ultimately the beekeepers that we're going to work with as business partners, and very importantly with the regulatory authorities, because they've asked the same questions. So we've been testing this kind of a system since the 1980s. The idea of using bees to vector or deliver plant treatments has been around for decades. The science and the engineering has evolved to a point where we've got a system that in a very user-friendly can make this happen realistically in a cost-effective way for the growers. We also work with different species of bees. So the concern that folks have, and a very real concern around colony collapse, is very much tied to honeybees. We are initially working with a bumblebee system, where commercial bumblebee hives are produced just specifically for pollination purposes, and these hives have about a 10 to 12 week life. And so we work in connection with those bee companies in order to provide our solution to the same farmers. The interesting answer on honeybees is one of the reasons why honeybee colony collapse disorder has been an issue is the overuse of chemical pesticides, right? So our product is a totally safe, beneficial fungus, which is benign and harmless to the bees, and through its use, the use of chemicals can be reduced. So we have a totally sustainable model where the bees can actually help themselves. That's what's very exciting about what we're doing. That's why the beekeepers are very excited about what we're doing as well, and ultimately will be our strongest spokespeople.
Good answer. Philip, when I landed in a meeting of late-stage applicants back in 14, maybe 15, the Agrima kids were off in one corner, and everybody in the room was like, those guys, they know what they're doing. They've got the facility, they've got the technology, they've got it down pat. You just got your license recently. What took all those years for that to happen?
Yeah, I think it's a story that a lot of people in the industry are very familiar with. It's a very rigorous application process to go through with Health Canada. When we submitted our license application, it was in 2013. It was November 7th, actually, of 2013 that we submitted our application, and I think it was shortly after that we ran into you at that meeting. And at the time, in April of 2014, they only issued 21 licenses. And then since then, they only issued a few licenses per year to cannabis companies. And so we spent about a year lobbying Health Canada, doing everything we could to make progress with our application. And we're very entrepreneurial at heart. We're very committed to this industry, and we want to build a global company. And so after a year of working on Health Canada, not really making any progress, we decided to look at other opportunities to continue to develop our business. And so we looked at getting licensed in the United States. We're now licensed in Oregon and Nevada. And in that period of getting licensed in 2 other markets, eventually Health Canada came around, and we got through the security clearance process, which was the actual the licensing step that was holding us up. And so we were actually the 70th company licensed in the country, and we're now very well established with Health Canada. We have a great relationship with them. We've received our dealer's license earlier this year, and I think that in honesty, the reason that we were held up in security clearance is because we've had some experience operating in the previous licensing system that Health Canada has established. And some people, I think the previous government, especially with the Conservatives, may not have seen that as a benefit. And obviously now with the changing landscape in Canada and with legalization happening in the next month and the policy changes that are happening at the federal level, that's obviously a different story with the Liberals in power now. And so we've got a really great relationship with Health Canada. We've overcome that challenge. For anybody who's interested, it took 4 years and 3 days for us to get our license. So there's a lot of persistence and commitment to get to that point. And now moving forward, because we do have that experience operating in the cannabis industry and actually making products and selling them both in Nevada and Oregon, I think we're very well positioned to target this emerging adult use market opportunity, because there's very few companies in Canada that have actually sold recreational products, that have sold into dispensaries, that have made vape pens or chocolates, edibles, all of these other product formats that people are talking about and really excited about coming to market. Very few companies have actually made them, sold them, pulled them through to the dispensary level, done pop-ups, all the marketing, advertising, hardware, packaging, labeling, fulfillment, all of the things that go into bringing products to market. Very few companies in Canada have actually done that. And we're one of those few companies, and I think that that's going to benefit us tremendously as this market opportunity unfolds in the months and years ahead.
Tharmer, as an investor, I love SmartShare, which is essentially SmartShare is putting sensors in parking spots so that city headquarters can see that how often they're being used, that someone's been in too long, and instead of sending out 100 parking inspectors across the city, they can send one right to my car spot and give me a ticket. I hate that part of it. As an investor, I love it because I could see the use. As a human being, fuck you. Explain yourself.
Well, you know what's funny? When we first started off SmartShare, we actually want to make it easy, make parking cheaper. We ended up doing ended up being a 180 turn, making it more expensive. But what we're actually doing right now is that our main customers are cities and private parking operators. The way their system works right now is very inefficient. You have to, as a city operator, they have to look at multiple dashboards to tell if somebody paid, to say where spots are occupied, and all this data just gets thrown in the garbage in the end. What we've done is that we built a simple platform where anyone working for the city will be able to read this information and understand what's going on. Now, Chris, we will eventually end up helping drivers. Hold on, stay with me. So what's going on is that we want to eventually take on payments, automatic ticketing, remove HR from the equation. That's the main reason it's called smart parking. Currently, it's very inefficient. City of Surrey, for example, right now, part of the Smart City initiative is that we want to eventually deploy 500 spots onto our system, and using those 500 spots, we'll deploy onto an app for drivers to be able to tell whether a spot's occupied or vacant. Another thing is, for example, City of Vancouver, the problem we're solving with them is commercial loading and unloading zones. Usually on Water Street in Gastown, trucks are supposed to park for 3 to 5 minutes, unload their product, and leave. What's happening is that they're being there for half an hour. They would take a lunch break, smoke a cigarette, come back and continue. It's very inefficient, leads to congestion. Everyone has a parking problem. We all have a parking problem looking for a spot. So we want to help solve that issue, at the same time make it very, very efficient when it comes to the whole unique system. Imagine going onto a single dashboard, being able to tell which spots are occupied, which spots are vacant live, which policy changes do you want to implement. City of Surrey, for example, one example that we did with them is that it was paid parking between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. it was in front of Sir Memorial Hospital. They realized between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., most of the people one or two vehicles are staying all night, and those end up being city staffers. So the policy change that they implemented was they made it 24-hour paid parking, because they're supposed to park in designated areas. This frees up the parking spots for people who want to go visit the hospital, to park right in those areas. So yeah, we're making it a lot harder for drivers in a way that they'll be issued tickets right away, and I'm guilty of that. I'm one of those people that will pay for 2 hours and the parking for 3 hours and hope I don't get a ticket. But I'm also making the system so people like me don't do that anymore. We can't end up all cheating the system. We have to pay like everybody else.
Fair enough. Sheldon, you still have blockchain in the company name. What's going on?
Sorry, what's wrong with having blockchain in the company name?
Ladies and gentlemen. The markets hate blockchain right now. They hate crypto. I just had Paul Gill from Lamico Metals on. He's got a crypto deal and a graphite deal. It was like, what are you doing in 2018? Blockchain obviously has a lot of use, and you're a company that's working on a lot of different parts of the system that will make good use and eventually good money. But the markets hate it, and as a result, they're punishing your share price a little bit.
Well, they are punishing our share price, which is unfortunate. A lot of it is based on not understanding what our business is. I mean, when you see the word blockchain, people default to cryptocurrency mining, which is one part of our business. And granted, it's a large part of our revenue, but it's not the only thing we do, and it's not the future of the company. It's a big part of the company, but a lot of our investment and a lot of our hiring and a lot of our time is going into blockchain as a platform that we can monetize for building with clients. So, you know, Dan was on yesterday morning explaining some of the blockchain platforms we're working on, some of the clients we have in that area. So there's the whole software side of it. So when I think of blockchain, obviously that has cryptocurrency in it and it has Bitcoin in it, but blockchain itself is everywhere. I mean, try and find a bank or a credit card company or an insurance company or a medical company that's not looking at it, thinking about it, or doing something with blockchain. So, you know, we're a blockchain solution company. We give solutions in different industries around blockchain. And we also, you know, as a big part of our company is blockchain forensics. So we're bringing blockchain to the masses by bringing compliance and AML and KYC into blockchain, so people don't have to be afraid of blockchain anymore. They don't have to be afraid of looking at bringing blockchain applications into their companies to streamline and make things better, to reduce fraud, to get rid of friction in transactions. So I don't really see a problem with the word blockchain in our company. And I know we've had these discussions where people have said, hey, why don't you change your name to like DMG Technologies and get rid of blockchain? And I'm like, well, you know, we have great technologies in blockchain. We have some of the smartest people on the planet in blockchain. I think everybody's aware of our acquisition of Blockseer, some of the best minds in blockchain that have been doing this for a long time. The intelligence and the IP they have and the people that work in blockchain are just phenomenal. And this is why we have companies that have actually invested in DMG just to get access to our software skills to help them build up platforms that have blockchain integrated into their companies. So I understand where the market's coming from. I mean, everybody loved blockchain when Bitcoin was $20,000, and everybody hates it when it's $5,000 or $6,000. But it doesn't mean that we as a company have changed in any way. We're still a profitable company. We still have 3 main lines of business that are doing well and growing. And you know, we're quite proud to be a blockchain company.
At the end of the row here, Province Brands. Now, I'm going to be a little bit easier on Province Brands than I was going to be because Duma Winsher, the CEO, had to go to hospital, so we've got a late stage replacement. So I don't want to break your back too hard. But you're a company that is going to brew cannabis beer or is brewing cannabis beer. In order to do that, you need not 1 license that you don't have, but 2 licenses that you don't have. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say you might get 1. But getting 2 is going to be a struggle with those 2 areas being places that the government isn't particularly happy with combining. What do you do if you don't get a brewery license, or you don't get an LP license, or you don't get either?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think the underlining under this question is you're assuming that we're a regular cannabis company. And in that case, the question is absolutely right. I mean, if all we're doing is growing cannabis and going to sell it to consumers, how can we go and say, hey, we're a cannabis company, we don't have a license? But that's not exactly what we are. I mean, Province Brands is a technology company. We have a unique technology that allows us to brew beer from the cannabis plant. Now, as a technology company, we have a few ways on how we can implement our technology and choose the strategy with which we want to go into the market. We could have decided that we want to go and license it to other LPs or other companies, and we took the decisions that we want to go and brew by ourselves. So it's just choosing the path, so we can always pivot if we need. But going into specific questions, so I'll start with the more important one, which is the brewing from cannabis. What we did is we did do a press release a few months ago in March 2018, where it was then Cannabis Sweet and today Oxley that is helping us achieve that license and to get there to that place faster, so we can start brewing our beverages. And looking into the alcohol license, so on the alcohol it's substantially easier for us because the alcohol product, which we have only one, is from hemp. Hemp is completely legal by anybody to use, and we can just create the wort in our facility and then give it to a co-packer to do it for us. So we do have mitigation plans for each one, but again, we have to remember that the core of Province Brands is the technology, is the IP. It's not the fact that we have or not have a license.
Fair enough. Patriot One. Every time there's a mass shooting, I notice that there's a little bit more volume on Patriot One stock. Certainly, those of us who believe that America is a hellish post-Armageddon death zone understand the value of what you're selling. Are you profiting from fear and doom?
Well, I think what we're profiting from is people's desire for a response to the problem. We don't ambulance chase, and I have studiously resisted ever in the wake of an incident saying, oh, we could have stopped that. That doesn't help anybody. What we have to take is a forward look and say, this is a type of incident that we're in business to prevent. And so we're always looking forward to the future. And I think, the simple reality is people are crying out for solutions to incidents of mass violence, whether from terrorists or disturbed individuals with a gun. It's not only a great social cause, it is a great business. There's no doubt about it. We can deliver great shareholder value, but what better way to reap shareholder value than saving people's lives? And there's nothing to be ashamed of in that.
Okay. In order to successfully profit from what you're creating as it relates to your market cap is what?
About 180 million.
How many systems do you need to sell to match that market cap?
Well, as I say, we've already got 10,000 qualified clients, each of which, has a multitude of needs. Once we meet the demand that's out there, we're well in excess of where we're at right now for our market cap pre-revenue. So they're just waiting for the product to be ready. That's right. And, it's a patient market. They've been following this for a while. They know they want it because there's nothing like it on the market. We take a fundamentally different approach to conventional security screening. If you think about metal detectors, security guards and metal detector wands, millimeter wavelength systems, these are all fixed, visible security screening areas, and it's just not preventing attacks. You think at a Brussels airport, it's got all of the conventional security screening. Terrorists show up at the airport, they're not planning to go through that security screening area, but they still commit an act of mass murder. So what we've got to do is move sensors out and do passive covert detection, get on top of threats before things happen. That's what we're in the business of doing, and that is a unique proposition, but really it's the way of the future. It's smart security, embedding sensors to make people safer.
Let's get back to the bees. I noticed because you're using honeybees, there is definitely a smaller life, sorry, not honeybees, bumblebees. There's a smaller life expectancy on each of the hives that you have. How do you keep your business going when your hives are dying off?
So the way the commercial bumblebee business works is that there's actually two global multinational players. They happen to be European companies who make a business out of manufacturing, if you will, or commercially rearing bumblebees. And the hives that they produce have about a 10 or 12 week life. And by that, what I mean is when they first sell their hive, it'll have one queen with about 50 insects. And then as the hive matures, it reaches 200 to 250 insects and then starts declining. So that's the life cycle, the 10 to 12 weeks. At the end of the 10 to 12 weeks, the farmer simply opens the hive up, the queen flies away if it's still alive, and they go back into nature, so to speak. And then you have repeat business. That's what's beautiful about our business model, that each time the farmer replants their crop, they need to buy more hives to pollinate that crop. And oh, by the way, that's where we come along to protect that against different pests. So it is a repeat sell, and we fit in with the natural commercial bumblebee cycle.
So are you selling the application to the hives that allows the bees to be smeared in fungus, or are you selling the hives proper?
So initially we're going to sell the hives properly. We want to create the brand, the BVT brand, with our pilot market, the pilot crops, right? And so we want everybody to recognize that this technology and this sustainable tool that we're pioneering is powered by BVT system. Over time, we want to focus on the technology and the IP of our system, and we will work through distribution partners and sales partners to commercialize in other markets where we don't have our own sales organization. So at that point, we're already thinking about models like Intel Inside, where we would partner with the bee company, they would sell it, but it would have our dispensing system on the inside, if you will.
And that dispensing system is locked down IP-wise, like I couldn't recreate it?
I'm sorry?
That delivery system is locked down from an IP perspective? I couldn't...
We have 5 different technology areas in our system that are patented. We have over 60 patent applications worldwide. 15 have been granted covering these 5 areas.
Okay.
So it's very, I've worked in this industry, in the global ag chem industry for about 15 years. Deals are done because you have a strong IP portfolio, right? The big companies like Bayer, and I used to work at Bayer, by the way, and Bayer has now acquired Monsanto, so they are by far the #1 player in this space. They only look at protected IP companies, startups that have that kind of a portfolio. And so we fit in there, and we decided very early on that's one of the big investments we needed to make.
Okay. Ascent, you have a business model we were just talking about before that if we talk for an hour, I think we'd almost get to the end of it. There's a lot of different things that you've got going on. The markets hate that. The markets want... We're growing 1 million square feet of weed, and we're all going to be Scarface. They don't want, all right, well, the consumer goods market is, how do you tell your story in a way over the next 6 months that competes with the rubbish like Tilray that, or just go out there and blast when you're trying to build a mature adult company that's going to be around in 25 years?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the challenges we have. We have a very diverse portfolio of assets, and at this stage of the industry, I think it's important to have your fingers in a few different pots so that whenever an opportunity catches fire or presents itself, that we have some IP or some business divisions in that area. The way that we define ourselves is a global cannabis company that's focused on consumer packaged goods. In order to do that, you need to incorporate a lot of research and development into a number of different areas. So to support that, we've got a research agreement with Simon Fraser University with 2 different professors we're working with. We have 4 master's students getting their master's degree. All of that research helps to support the innovation and the creation process of bringing these new consumer packaged goods to market. So things like vape pens, edibles, pre-rolls, tinctures, gel caps, suppositories, and all other types of product formats that are going to be hitting the market in the years ahead. And so you need to have that research.
We're actually bringing out some suppository samples for you all to try in a couple of minutes.
Surprise.
Some people here aren't worried.
And so having that research is really integral to be able to diversify your portfolio and be able to take advantage of those opportunities as they present themselves. So we've done a really good job in aligning ourselves with a very reputable university, a number of other researchers we work with. We have 15 scientists on payroll in-house that are working on a number of things, including something that we just released today as a press release, which we've developed a water-soluble format for delivering THC. So there's obviously a lot of people who are talking about beverages, and that one of the challenges is that THC, when you extract it, it's actually an oil. And oil and water don't mix very well. And so for companies who are looking to target the beverage market, having a way to convert that oil into something that's water soluble is going to be crucial to ensure consistency across all of their products as they roll out different batches and lots, and you don't want to have it separating within your product. And so that technology is something we've been working on for a while to bring to the market, and that's something that we see a lot of opportunity in. And that's just one aspect of the things that we're working on. We have a tissue culture methodology which allows us to produce disease-free, pest-free, pathogen-free, mold-free, genetically identical starting plant material. As the industry starts to scale up and growers are looking for clean starting plants, we'll be able to offer those starting plants to them, as well as using them with our own internal service, with our own internal growing. And so the challenge that we have, like you said, is that we do have a lot of things going on, and that it is really hard to differentiate ourselves from a lot of the other companies. And as you mentioned, in the next 6 months, how are we going to do that? We're going to do that with execution. And there's a lot of hype in the cannabis industry right now. There's obviously a lot of excitement with Tilray and with some of these other companies that have gotten these very large market capitalizations on unsubstantiated business metrics and a lot of hype, and there's not really very much to support the valuations out there for a lot of these companies. And I think that there's going to be a separation of the companies in the next 6 to 18 months. The companies that actually execute are going to be rewarded in the capital markets, and the ones that are just talking about it but don't actually execute are going to get punished. And that's what we're looking forward to, is that day of reckoning when the market capitalizations are actually rationalized by fundamental business metrics. And I think that's where we're going to accelerate.
What's your market cap right now?
It's about $250 million.
What's your annual revenue?
We did $10.5 million last year.
That's justifiable. More justifiable than Tilray, that's for certain.
Yeah, they hit $26 billion yesterday.
Right.
Yeah.
Good Lord. So on the other side of the valuation scale from 26 billion, SmartShare. Tharmer, first of all, still fuck you. So the moment all of your sensors are out on the street, I suspect that I'd know some people who are going to go out there with shovels and peel them off the road. You say that there's an element of your business model that's going to benefit drivers, and certainly being able to see where there's an empty parking spot will be helpful. Although if 3 of us have the same app, we're all going to be meeting at the same place. How do you get this thing to a place where you don't have people out in the streets with sledgehammers saying F SmartShare?
So we're primarily focused on the software aspect. So in the whole parking system, smart parking system, yes, you have sensors, you have a gateway, but then you have the brain. And SmartShare, we just developed the brain. We're platform agnostic. So whether you have a camera that sees which spots are occupied or vacant through deep learning, or a sensor in ground or above ground, we'll work with that. Our partners on the East Coast, they have already sensors in ground, and they just push that onto our system. So we don't say that we're manufacturer for smart parking sensors. No, we just developed the brain. So if in certain areas or cities we have people taking shovels, we'll switch to cameras. It's an easy solution.
Damn you. Can't win with this kid.
We're going to program the bees, and
We'll send the bees around to check all the spots. So what I like about what you're doing on the other side of the FU is that we're clearly going to a driverless vehicle situation very, very soon. And the problem with parking downtown is everyone wants to park downtown because we all want to walk 2 minutes to our vehicle. When we have driverless vehicles, they can park in Surrey and come to us when we need them. So this actually might open up the situation where we have off-site parking, non-peak parking that's useful as opposed to everyone cramming in the same spot out front. So as much as I'm giving you a lot of shit, I can begrudgingly see where there might be some advantage here.
Well, thank you, Chris. And absolutely. I mean, right now we're not only solving the problem of today, we're solving the problem of tomorrow. When we deploy these sensors in partnership with our manufacturers, in the future, these autonomous vehicles, when they drop you off to your work, for example, they'll know exactly where to go park and the fastest route to get there. They don't have to go around with cameras on these vehicles, seeing which spots are empty or occupied. So yeah, it truly helps for the future.
Good enough. I notice you still have blockchain in the name of your company. Nothing's changed. So I jest. DMG is mining crypto, correct?
That's correct.
Obviously, that's a lot less profitable use of hardware and bandwidth than it was at a certain time. Is there actually still a decent amount of profit to be made, or would it make more sense to change those machines out to different usage?
I think there's still profit in Bitcoin mining and different altcoins. As everybody knows in this type of industry, the largest cost in mining is power. So for those that have a strong power structure and have figured this out so they're not paying larger power bills, it's quite profitable. Industrial miners like ourselves and a few others in North America are still quite profitable in mining. One thing that's happened in Bitcoin and other GPU-based minings is, we go through these periods of every 2 to 3 years where as technology gets better, you need to upgrade your hardware to better hardware. And I think this is the same in almost every industry. As cars get better, every 3 or 4 years, people are buying new cars because they have new technology. It's no different in the crypto world. It may be more capital intensive, and it may happen, a little bit sooner than a car, but you can use a miner for many, many years if your cost of power is low. So you can use a miner that's 5 or 6 years old if it's 1 cent power. If it's 12 cent power, you probably don't want to use that miner because you're going to lose a lot of money paying for it to heat your living room or wherever it is. The other part of turning miners on or turning them off is that the miners are the backbone of the physical infrastructure that makes crypto work. So you need miners on and operating for transactions to happen. So we are the server farms that allow digital currencies to work. So we'll never go off completely. I don't think if we did, there would be no digital currencies. There would be no blockchains that are operating. So there's always going to be a role for miners, and there's always going to be money to incentivize miners to operate. We're just sort of going through this up and down of what is that balance of what's efficiency versus inefficient mining.
So part of the up and down is the up. And I think one of the problems that people see in crypto right now is where are we going to get people who are going to give another run at buying enough cryptocurrency that prices ascend?
It's not just about buying crypto, it's what is each crypto used for, what's the value proposition. So, a lot of people understand what Bitcoin is and what its value proposition is, and people think about it in different ways, but there's like Litecoin, there's Ether, there's different coins, and they have a different usage. And the ones that are going to survive and have value and see the price increase over time and the usage increase over time are the ones that actually have an application that companies or people or governments want to use. And right now you have this plethora of different altcoins out there that are very specific or are having problems getting market traction because they don't really have a very good use case. There isn't a reason why you or I would want to use that in our business or our daily life or our interactions with other parties. And until you have a really good usage case, you're going to have a hard time getting traction and price gain and volume in your alt currency or your crypto. Bitcoin is very well known as the first, but it's survived and continues to survive because it does have use cases, security being number one, a store of value being number two, and it's also market and brand penetration. Everybody knows what it is. It's easy to use. You can sign up and do it right away. You have access to it. There's ATMs, there's exchanges, there's liquidity in the market. So, Bitcoin's probably not going to go away anytime. There will be other contenders to it that will grow, and maybe one day in the future there will be a cryptocurrency bigger and better and stronger than Bitcoin, but this is sort of new days in the world of crypto. Just like, through time, there are different currencies and different trends happened around, different fiat currencies, and they've just gotten better over time until we've come up with the system we have now. And cryptocurrency is no different. We're just going through those early growth stages.
Province Brands. So because of the licensing situation, because cannabis is a restricted substance, you're working with academia to develop your technology of brewing from cannabis instead of from barley. Do you require anything else to be added to the finished product in order to get the effect that alcohol would otherwise have?
So the first products that we're going to do are going to be brewed from cannabis, but the sensation that you get from them is going to be very much like any other edible that you have. At the moment, we don't see needing to add anything else. We take the cannabis, we have our proprietary process of how we can convert it into a wort that we can put into a fermentation vessel. In the fermentation, we obviously need to add yeast to create the fermentation and hops for the flavoring, and water, obviously, and that's the beer. we want to go with this product in the future and to have something that gives you also the sensation of alcohol. Even though you're getting high, you're going to get this sensation of alcohol, which is a bit more, liquid courage and less of a couch lock. How to get there, there's still a bit of unknowns. Right now, we don't see that we'll need to add different ingredients, but we may need to, and we don't want to commit to anything like that. But for the brewed product, it seems that we're going with...
So for the product that's in the fridge in the office right now,
Sorry?
for the product that's in the office fridge right now.
No, it's in the labs.
It's in the labs.
It's in the labs, but right now it's every time very, very small batches. Just.
So if I drink one of those cannabis beers, I get high?
You get high. Yeah, we de-alcoholize them. There's no alcohol.
Okay.
So
there's no cannabis oil that's added to that to complete that effect?
No, it's from the plant itself. We ferment the plant itself.
So one of the issues is Health Canada and the government at large has made it very clear that they don't like mixing alcohol with cannabis, except when it comes to selling them from the same government-run stores, obviously. How are you going to get yourself through the gauntlet of Health Canada, which we've already seen is even with the best-run organizations can make you wait 4 years to give you an answer? How are you going to convince them that you're worthy of being allowed to do the plan that you're raising money to do?
So you're talking about the fact of having the both licenses, or?
Well, having a product that essentially is in a beer. A cannabis product that's in a beer. Those are two things that the government doesn't want mixed.
So essentially what we're doing is, again, there's a lot of regulation that needs to be unveiled here, but we're removing the alcohol outside of it. So the minute you remove the alcohol and you have less than a specific percentage, it's not considered an alcoholic beverage anymore. It's just like any other edible. It's exactly...
So it's a hoppy water, not a beer.
Yeah, well, the beer comes from the fermentation itself. So the process of fermentation goes through a process. But when you ferment a beverage, part of the byproduct is that you create ethanol. We remove that ethanol and we sell it as industrial ethanol. Because it's from marijuana, we're not going to sell it as something that you can use in your kitchen. But we can use it back in extraction machines if we want, or things like that. But once we remove it, the beverage is not alcoholic anymore, and we do believe that Health Canada will understand and be able to do that separation.
Is there a potential here that you will not be able to actually fulfill the business plan that you've laid out?
Well, we obviously don't see that at the moment, and when you see all the other companies that are coming in, they're doing a process that while they're not doing the same as us, which is fermenting, they're infusing, they're taking a beer, they're de-alcoholizing it, and then adding cannabis to it. If you're assuming that all of them will also not be allowed after $5 billion that is invested from Constellation Brands, then yeah, we have the same risk. But bigger and more experienced than us believe that it is possible. We're just doing a different process and way to get to kind of the same idea. We believe what we're doing is premium and is craft, but it's the same idea. We're de-alcoholizing a beverage and making it get you high instead of drunk.
That's a pretty good answer. Critter, words to you. Gentlemen, we're at the stage of the evening here where I'm going to ask you if any of you have questions for the other people that you've heard business plans from. Because I think as you're all probably investors in your own time, and you all know what you like as a company and what you don't. Is there anyone on the panel here that you're interested in?
Sure. Well, I have perhaps 3 facetious questions and 1 serious one. First is,
love it.
What happens when the bees realize they're being exploited and get unionized? What happens to pricing? The second is whether you've looked at vertical integration, putting the cannabis into Doritos, which would cut out the middleman. The third is whether with cannabis beer, as compared to edibles, you're going to need to pee more but can't be bothered to go to the toilet. And the fourth one is a serious question around cybersecurity. Is there a looming battle between blockchain and quantum computing? If we assume that quantum computing is going to come through in less than 10 years and poses a fundamental risk to all current cybersecurity, is blockchain part of the answer to that?
There were a lot of questions there. I guess you're starting with me. I am not a specialist in quantum computing, although I have looked at some of this, and we've looked at quantum computing. And of course, we've got D-Wave as a nice Vancouver company that is pioneering in this way. But my understanding of the mathematics is not as good as our friends in blocks here. But the way that quantum computing works, that the actual math is different than the way that crypto works. So it's sort of like round pegs, square holes. So the way the quantum computing tries to solve a problem is not the same way that you would solve encryption issues. So my understanding is that they don't go hand in hand. It's not like you can say, I want to break this next block and I want to do it in 10 seconds using a different technology. If it's not a SHA-256 technology that you're using, the ability to try and break in and get that hash, to break into that block, is basically irrelevant. I give a presentation every year at the annual forensics conference in Canada. This year it's coming up in October in Ottawa. And I calculated the time it would take using all the hash rates, all the miners in the world, if they got together and tried to break into one block, into one hash. We calculated it would be 650 million years of brute force attack. I don't see with the technology of quantum computing being able to sideline that and somehow go around this brute force attack way. That it could somehow solve the hash rate in some way that would be different than a brute force attack.
Sheldon, did you have any questions in response to Patriot One or anyone else?
I actually have a question because there's two cannabis companies here. And I'm just curious, we talk a lot about Health Canada and regulation. There is a federal election coming up, and we have a prime minister that has opened the doors to regulation and legalization of cannabis. If the government changes to a different government that is not open to it, what happens to this industry? What happens if the laws and regulations that are opening up cannabis to recreational and have eased things medically, a new, more conservative government comes in? What happens to this industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think medical cannabis is going to stay law forever in Canada. It's been mandated by the Supreme Court, so there's absolutely no risk that medical cannabis would ever be impacted by a new government change. And as it relates to a new government coming in the next election potentially, all governments are very keen to bring in tax dollars. And if you look at the total amount of revenue that's going to be derived from this inventory, the governments, both federal and provincial, are going to be the biggest winners by far. And if you look at a $10 billion retail market opportunity, there's a 10% cannabis tax, there's a GST, PST, HST, so that's anywhere from 10 to 12% depending on what province you're in. That adds another $2.2 billion to the $10 billion retail that different levels of government are getting. And then when you break down that the provinces are going to be responsible for distribution, just like they are with alcohol, they're going to be taking a wholesale margin off of that, which is 20 to 30%. So they're going to be taking another maybe $2-3 billion of the margin from marking it up from wholesale to the retailers. And then when you look at all of the income tax that they derive from payroll, we have 150 employees. We pay a lot of money in payroll taxes. We also, eventually, once we execute our business plan, we'll be paying dividend tax as well. Our shareholders will, I should say. And so there's just, I think, too much money at stake here for any government to try to put the cat back in the box or the bag. But
governments are politicians. They're not businesses. I don't understand how you can equate a lot of money. There's a lot of money in lots of industries. I don't understand how there's lots of money for lots of people equates into government policy.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think secondly...
Voters decide what government policy is at the end of the day. Maybe not today, but they could do it tomorrow.
Right, and I think that the Canadian voters spoke overwhelmingly in favor of legalization based on the last election. I think that the legalization platform was one of the key initiatives that the Liberals undertook to get elected and to get a majority, which took everybody by surprise, myself included. And I think that the vast majority of Canadians support legalization. I think the latest polls are about 65% support. So to your point about them being politicians, they also very closely monitor polls, and with 65% support, I don't think it would be a prudent political decision or a financial one for any government in the future to try to undo this industry.
Yeah, I'll just add to that I agree completely that I don't believe that it's going to change, and I think the risk of it changing is close to zero, if not zero. But as Philip said, with their company and Province Brands also is looking already at the international markets, and we're working with a country in Europe to get a license there also. We're also trying to work on that already. So we all understand that this is a global market where you don't put all your eggs in one bag, and we're not, gambling only in Canada. It's a great base for us. It's our backyard, but we're all looking to expand globally. And
yeah, I think I agree. It's a genie that's unlikely to be put back into the bottle. But the question really is around the valuations. I mean, people are going to have to consume an awful lot of cannabis to support the market capitalization of cannabis companies. So is it that what you see is really a global market for this? Are you going to have to expand outside Canada, or is it around diversification into multiple strands of product? Because if you take all those valuations together, that must vastly outstrip the amount of consumption in Canada.
I got to say, I'm liking this format. This is good. You guys are giving each other shit right now.
I completely agree. The valuations right now don't make any sense based on strictly the Canadian market opportunity. Most estimates put it at about a $10 billion retail opportunity. And if you take that down to what the licensed producers are actually going to be able to generate as far as revenue selling to the provinces, it might be $5 or maybe $6 billion domestically in Canada. And use whatever multiple you want on your revenues, but you could take the top 5 licensed producers, and it doesn't make sense financially to justify those valuations. And so it absolutely is about the global opportunity and about diversifying your company, both from a product offering standpoint, but also geographically, which is why we're licensed in Oregon, licensed in Nevada, pursuing licensing in Denmark. And that's where I think the valuations are being driven from, is from that unknown about what that international opportunity is. There's no denying that Canadian cannabis companies are leading the world, and we have such an incredible head start on all of these countries that are now legalizing. And as new markets open up, like the United Kingdom just announced a few weeks ago, you can imagine that there's people in the UK planning to apply for a license. Well, if they're going to compete with Canadian companies that have been doing it for years, then they're going to be at a significant disadvantage, and that's where the Canadian companies are going to be able to take advantage of this head start that we've been given and continue to lead the industry.
Philip, do you have any questions for anyone else?
I do have a cannabis question for Province Brands, which is that when you do an extraction on cannabis, THC in its natural state is an oil. How have you addressed the challenge of keeping the oil suspended or in solution or emulsified in your beer without it separating?
Well, it goes back again to the fact that we're not infusing it with oil. We're actually creating the wort from the plant material itself. There are residues of THC in the rootstocks and stems, and we use that as the biomass to create the wort that we put in the fermentation vessel. And through the fermentation process and the brewing process, there's enough heat to do the decarbonization for the THC for it to become an edible that you can consume. So it's essentially there's not oil that's needs to be soluble.
So THC acid, which is in its natural state a crystal structure, when you decarboxylate it by applying heat, it turns into THC, which is bioavailable and what gives you that psychoactive effect. THC in its natural state is an oil. So when you do an extraction and you decarboxylate it into THC, that THC will be an oil form. So I'm just wondering if you've had any challenges with that or any successes. I'm genuinely curious.
I'm not sure I will know how to answer the technicalities of the science. I mean, as we said before and we presented before, we have 8 scientists on our team out of 20 people. It's a very R&D focused. We have 3 PhDs that are focusing on these things. We did have a few tasting events where we've done this already. And it's something that I'm sure they can put you in touch with our PhDs and we can talk about it, but I would not know how to give you that exact technicality.
Fair enough. Yeah, you can't know everything about it. So,
SmartShare, B-Vectoring, any questions for anybody?
Yeah, I have actually a question for Patriot One. So I live in the US and I'm shocked about the mass shootings that we experience. I have kids that go to school, so it touches it touches close to home when I read about it.
There was a mass shooting today, actually.
Oh my God! In Maryland?
It's any day with a Y at the end.
Don't get me going on our environment in the U.S. these days. But my question for Patriot One is, I mean, I know that you've got technology hurdles, you got regulatory and all those things. I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out. But do you see like a tipping point where it's going to be mandated in, I don't know, commercial buildings, Class A buildings. In order to have that certification, you're going to have one of your systems installed. Or in schools across Canada or in the US, it's just going to be there. Do you foresee in the future such a tipping point where this is just going to become like a fire extinguisher that you have to have inside a building?
Well, I think that'll probably be driven by liability insurance more than regulation. But I think we are close to that point. I've spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C. over the last few months speaking to congressional offices around funding bills for school safety. What we've been arguing for is don't be prescriptive about the security measures, be technology agnostic, because there are innovations coming through. We have a superior solution to metal detectors or, God forbid, guns for teachers. You know, there are innovations that can make a difference. So we've asked them to be technology agnostic, which they've done. The funding bills that have come through will allow schools to invest in new innovations. And then I think the requirement to have them will be driven by, firstly, liability insurance, and second, by parent committees who are going to insist on having these technologies in schools. So I think we're already very close to that tipping point, but it's a combination of factors that will drive it.
It certainly would be better than arming teachers, I would think. Yeah. So we're at the end of this has been scintillating. I've enjoyed this so much. This is so much better than the usual, like, mutual CEO respect society. Let's not cause any ruffled feathers, but I think the information that's come out of this has been really impressive. What I want to ask you guys before we finish is, if you had $10,000 that I gifted you right now, and I said you've got to choose one of these guys and it can't be you to invest in, what's impressed you most?
Well, I've already done it with DMG Blockchain, so I've got to do something else. I think I like the bees, and once the bees are really sort of highly profitable, they're going to need protecting, and those hives are going to need Patriot One. So I think we've got a little bit of integration
here. The JVs are flying right now. Bee vectoring, what do we think?
I guess I got to reciprocate. Is that how it works? So he gives me his 10, I gave him back to him. So yeah, I mean, I'll be very honest. The way I look at it is, all of these are great investment opportunities, and I think what I take, my wife, my family, what we decide to invest in are, social, ethical investments, and guns and controlling guns is, like I said, close to heart for us. So I'd probably hope that they succeed and can help us in the United States.
Philip?
We're back to mutual admiration. So
you guys should have a beer together later. Philip?
Well, I would say that municipalities and governments are always looking to generate additional types of revenue, and they're very cash strapped. So I think that having a parking system that allows municipalities to be able to increase their revenue would be something that I see a lot of opportunity in. So I would go with the parking. Yeah.
SmartShare.
SmartShare. There we go. Yeah.
SmartShare. What do you think?
Oh, thank you. What I would personally invest in, I'm a big fan of security, so it'd be Patriot One. I mean, security is always an evolving field, such as medical. So my investment would go with Patriot One.
Sheldon?
Well, as much as I asked the questions about cannabis, I do think there is a future in it. I think it's not completely understood yet, but I don't see it changing too much or slowing down. I do believe that our neighbor to the south could create some difficulties, especially for some of us involved in that business that want to travel there. But I would put it into cannabis.
Province Brands.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just came from the States. It's scary flying there with business cards that say you work in a cannabis company.
Right.
But yeah, I would go with the blockchain, especially as it sounds like right now the reason the valuation is low is because of blockchain, not about the company. Go for it when the blockchain comes back.
That's interesting. So I'll say that, when I came into this, there were a few companies here that I thought, well, this is going to be a tough one to throw some wrinkly ones at, and there's others that would be easy. I've got to give you guys credit. You've taken the gauntlet and stood tall from one man down. I think all of you are interesting investment opportunities. I think that time will tell as to which of them stand out above others, but I can obviously there's a lot of people who see the value of trying to fix the hellscape that is the USA. Bee vectoring is a really interesting idea, and then the market is immense. Ascent is a client, and I'm happy that they're a client, because every time we talk to them, they make life more difficult for us, because it becomes harder to tell the story because they've got so many damn things they're doing. SmartShare is not public yet. Is that?
Yep, we're currently in the process of being listed. We just need to finish our raise of 1.3 million. And after we finish that, we'll officially list on the TSXV.
I think it's a really interesting, novel idea, and as much as part of me hates it, the other part of me thinks if I'm going to be paying parking tickets, I want to be benefiting on the other side of that. So that makes a lot of sense to me. DMG is also a client and has been for a while, and I think the market doesn't understand, for the most part, what's going on at DMG. I think it sees blockchain, it sees crypto, and it goes sell. But I've sat in your offices and talked to your guys, and they're the smartest people I think I've met. There are things that you guys are doing that are difficult to explain to the market, but once you've flushed it out and things have moved beyond the fear of blockchain, I think you'll be in a really interesting space. And Province Brands, look, I wrote a story about Province Brands 2 weeks ago. The headline says Province Brands is a shit show. No, a clown car full of bullshit claims. And I got to tell you, your credit where it's due to your CEO. He called me up the next day, and he gave me an hour of his time, and he admitted there were a few things that he said that he shouldn't have said, put it down to inexperience, but there's also been, I appreciate that you've stepped up at the 0 hour and answered some prickly questions, and in a really good way, actually, that makes me want to take another look at what you guys are doing. I hope that there's been benefit out there for you guys, but this is 6 companies that are well worth at least looking into, and that wraps up the main stage.